This is another episode of Dangerous Ideas. My name is Shawn. I'm an innovation strategist. What we do is we break down concepts and frameworks that will change your life. Oh, wow. Hey, everyone. This is another episode of Dangerous Ideas. My name is Shawn, and what we do in this podcast is we break down concepts and frameworks that will change your life, change your business, change your career, but most importantly, change your life. And we got another podcast, solo podcast. You all know that, I love having guests on, but to be honest with you, I really love the solo pods. It's just me taking some clips that I've watched over the last number of weeks and bringing it to you here. And I got some really fire clips that will hopefully inspire you, give you some motivation as we enter into the summer weeks, and also like some interesting ideas as well. So the first clip is probably from one of my heroes, which is Will Smith. I love Will Smith. Everybody that knows me knows that I'm one of the biggest Will Smith fans on the planet. And this clip is from the podcast from Carmelo Anthony and the Kid Mero on their new podcast called 7 p.m. in Brooklyn. And actually this clip made the rounds, but I thought this was an incredible clip that every single young person should be listening to. Let's drop it.
People don't really realize what it takes to win, right? And it's like there's a great quote. Don Simpson, who was one of the original producers of the first Bad Boys, and we saw a screen and it was really good. And he said, I said, it's good. It's at about 90%, And he said the great thing about being at 90% is at least you're halfway there.
Right? It's crazy.
And I was like, and that has turned out to be so true. The difference between 90% and 100% is lifetimes. It's like the difference between good and great, it is underestimated by most humans. It's like if you want to be good, you can be talented and be good. You can wake up and be good, but if you good and you just wake up and be good, you're not gonna beat me. You're never gonna beat me if you're not doing, 70-hour weeks on your craft, right? And it's like, that is such a hard thing to communicate to people. And it's even more difficult when people are talented, when people get a B easy.
They think they got it.
They think they got it, And it's like, I'm telling you, it's like, it's not easy, but it is really simple to change your life.
Man, I love this clip from Will Smith. This was making a rounds. I saw Kevin Hart post this on his IG as well. And he's essentially talking about this idea of how do you go from good to great. And the delta between that is most people can get to 90%, but really that greatness is the fact that you are halfway there. And I think one of the key lines from this is, as well, at the end, he says that you could have really great talent. And actually the hardest thing is that if you have great talent, sometimes you'll coast and you won't realize that to get to true greatness, that you can get to the next level. When I think about this, I think a ton about basketball. I think a ton about Kobe and Shaq. So there's actually a famous story from the 2008 Redeem team with Kobe. And when he was on this team, a whole bunch of amazing players, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Carmelo, they were on the 2008 Redeem team. And there's a story where Kobe saw that his team was actually going to the club that night. And then what he decided to do, which he actually does probably every single day, is that he goes to the gym and he gets his shots in. And so when his team was coming back from the club, everybody saw him already drenched coming back from his workout, while they were coming back from the club. And it was a reminder to them, is like, we got to lock in. And from that day forward, everybody locked in. LeBron, Dwayne, they all locked in. And it just shows Kobe's greatness, right? It's like everyone is there because they're really good. But of course, Kobe, the reason why he is so great is because he put in the extra hours. Another basketball reference is around Shaq. You know, a lot of people say that Shaq actually could have been the greatest player of all time. Now, of course, he's one of the most dominant figures in the NBA, but he's not considered the greatest of all time because, to be honest with you, he didn't put in the work. He had incredible talent, but to be the greatest of all time, you need to put in the hours. The beautiful thing here is, you know, Will Smith talking about what's actually required to be great. And of course, it's coming from Will Smith, and Will Smith is probably one of the most gifted entertainers, gifted personalities of our generation. So love this piece from Will. And, you know, it talks about the idea of not only being great and putting in the hours, but, you know, the power of relentlessness and being adaptable. You know, in my book, The Bold Ones, I talk about this idea of, you know, how do you become prolific? How do you become innovative during a short period of time? And it's really around, you know, putting in the reps, understanding your gifts, doubling down on your competitive advantage, and at some point, like, exploiting your gifts, like exploiting what you are truly great at. And I think that's what's required to be great. So I love this clip. It's a great piece to say, it's a reminder that you need to focus. It's a reminder that you need to work on being great. So I love this clip from Will Smith. It was making the rounds. You probably saw it. But listen, I needed to include it in the Dangerous Ideas pod. So the next piece is actually a piece from Wes Cow. I got this piece from Marketing Against the Grain podcast from Kip and Kieran. And she talks about how she worked with Seth Godin when he was building his alt MBA. Now, you don't know who Seth Godin is. Seth Godin is probably the most prolific writer in marketing in our history, one of the best marketing and business minds on the planet today. I had the pleasure of interviewing Seth Godin a number of years ago with my good friend Wang Yip, and it was a really cool moment for me to interview Seth. But in this clip from Marketing Against the Grain, I thought what Wes does, she includes a really intriguing piece about what it's like working with Seth Godin, and I thought this was a really great piece to pair with the Will Smith clip. So let's drop the clip, see what Seth Godin has.
I think one of the biggest things that I took away from working with Seth was drastically increasing my standards for myself and my expectations of other people. You know, when I started working with him, I just come from this startup that I thought was pretty fancy. And we talked about shipping fast and breaking things and sprinting and whatnot. And within the first couple of weeks of working with Seth, I realized that the speed at which we were shipping before, that I was shipping at this previous company, was extremely slow. And it's just fascinating because at the time I thought it was fast, you know? So it was kind of like seeing in black and white and then seeing in Technicolor. I'm like, oh my God, there's this whole other dimension of like speed or something, right? And so really raising my standards is a huge one. And that's something that I think is
how did that tactically show up? Just for people watching, Wes, who are like, yeah, you know, I'm not good at that. I want to raise my standards. Like, how did you actually do it?
So here's a fun story. When we were figuring out the book list that we wanted alt MBA students to read, we were going to ship everyone a box of books. And I came up with 20 some books. We narrowed it down to like seven or eight. And, you know, they arrived on Amazon, slams this stack of books on my desk. And it's like, okay, like go through these. Let me know which ones, you know, we should recommend. We should include in our book box. And I was like, okay, great. Like maybe I'll read, you know, one every 3 weeks or something and like, you know, figure it out. And he was like, you should read all of these books by the end of day tomorrow. And I was like, what? Like, you know, my first thought was that's impossible. And then my second thought was, okay, like if I had to do it in 2 days, I could figure out a way to do it in 2 days.
How would I do it?
Right, exactly. And so like that's just an example of like breaking the frame. Like whatever frame you have, Seth will break that frame.
Oh man, I love this clip so much, not only because it's about Seth Godin, but it's this idea of breaking the frame and doing what you seemingly thought was impossible. This reminded me of John F. Kennedy's speech at Rice University, September 12th, 1962, where he indicates that the U.S. is going to go to the moon. He says, we choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. And at that point, what was incredible about John F. Kennedy's speech at the time is that it actually surprised many people in his administration that he would indicate and signal to the world that he would go to the moon. At that time, if you may remember, or for most people who don't remember, is that the computers that they were using at the time, the max memory of the Apollo guidance computer was 64 kilobytes. 64 kilobytes was the memory that they had on those Apollo missions, the speed of 1 megahertz. 64 kilobytes. Like, this podcast is going to create 64 gigabytes. So they had more, you had more memory in like this iPhone is like 1,000 times more powerful than what they took to the moon. And at the time, they didn't have the technology, they didn't have the resources, but here is John F. Kennedy literally stating the impossible. And what he did by doing that was a couple things. Number one, he inspired innovation, right? He inspired new ways of doing things. Because John F. Kennedy said that, it spurred this technological revolution. They created so many breakthroughs in engineering and science and technology. It created a sense of urgency against a enemy, which at the time was Russia. And so by stating the impossible, they actually were able to make it happen. And I love this idea of breaking the frame. And of course, in this clip, Seth Godin, that's what he did, is like, I want you to read all of these books. And she just broke down how to do this. And to me, what I love is this idea of getting people to think about the impossible. One of the things that I've been talking a lot about in my keynotes is this idea of starting from zero, or having this zero principle mindset. The zero principle mindset is pretend that you are starting what you are doing from zero. Pretend that you are starting your processes, your operations, your brand, your company from zero. And what would you do? The only assumptions that you would have are some of the technologies that you have at your disposal. Maybe you have AI, maybe you have crowdsourcing, maybe you have cloud, you have mobile, whatever you have around you. Assume what you have around you, but start your operations, your process, your brand, your company from zero. What would you do? And it's a mind-bending question because, of course, we're just littered with what we know today. But if you assume nothing, how would you build it? A more interesting question would be, if I asked you to lose 2 pounds in 4 weeks, what would you do? Well, to lose 2 pounds in 4 weeks, you would tinker. You would optimize. You may push away those sweets. You may push away the popcorn for a night. But really, to lose 2 pounds in 4 weeks, it's kind of an incremental ask. But if I asked you to lose 20 pounds in 2 weeks, which is basically about the same question around how would you read 10 books in 2 days, it's an impossible question to ask. And so to answer both of those questions, what you would have to do is you would have to start from zero. You would start from scratch. You would, if I asked you to lose 20 pounds in 2 weeks, you would look at how you look at diet, sleep, exercise in fundamentally new ways. And so I love this idea of starting from zero, breaking the frame. And I think within business, within our own life, we're always thinking about tinkering. How do we make ourselves 1% better? The idea of making ourselves 1% better every single day. But another way of going about it is actually trying to break the frame. And that's why I love the idea of questions, because I think questions help us reframe how we look at our lives, our business, our careers. And by asking these impossible questions, we'll be able to get impossible results. In the book 0 to 1, Peter Thiel asked the question, which is essentially, how can you achieve your goals in 6 months? Like, how could you achieve, some of your moonshot goals in a very short period of time? And by trying to answer that question, you naturally come up with radical ideas. You naturally come up with innovative ideas. So I think a dangerous idea is trying to break the frame. And I love that Seth Godin was doing that. And by the way, the other cool part about this clip is that Wes worked with all these incredible Silicon Valley companies in San Francisco. And they are told to, break fast, move fast, break things. And here she's working with Seth, and Seth is moving way quicker than the companies that she worked at in Silicon Valley. So I love that clip from Marketing Against the Grain. All right, next clip. Now I think this clip will cement Chamath Palihapitiya as the most referenced individual when it comes to the solo pods. And, say what you will about Chamath. There's a lot of haters among Chamath. He's a SPAC king, etc. But Chamath, if you've been listening to this pod, he just drops some gems. I don't think there's another person on the planet that drops more gems in a pod than Chamath. And in this clip, this is a clip from the All In podcast where they had their 500K subscriber pod. And there was an audience member that was asking the entire crew, how do you break into bigger rooms? Like, how do you connect with bigger people, and giving some career advice for young people. And I thought this was incredible advice from Chamath Palihapitiya on the All In Pod. Let's drop the clip.
Well, I think Ted needs to embrace the idea that his life is going to be made of chapters. And I think that some chapters will work, some chapters won't work. Some chapters will work incredibly well. Some chapters will be benign in his life. And so you have to just sort of take a shot as best as you can when the shot presents itself. The reason why I say this is that if you view your life as a series of chapters, the real problem is going to be everybody else, because they're going to want to define you by one chapter. And that's because it allows them to compartmentalize their shitty life. So you have to be very careful in not allowing the expectations of other people to drag you down. This is like, you should live 8 or 9 careers. You should try 7 or 8 or 10 or 15 different things in your life. I've had many chapters, from cashier at Burger King to entrepreneur to executive to rank and file worker to investor, all of it. And it does not, one is more important than the other. And the only people that will try to make you feel good or bad about any one chapter are the ones that are just completely impotent and on the sidelines, and they can't get out of their own way. So just view your life as a series of chapters and just try your best. And don't be afraid to take risk.
I love that, which is the idea of your career should be in chapters. And I think sometimes we get really afraid of what people are going to say, that we're going to start something new. And I think Chamath lines it up really nicely, which is we should be looking at our career and our life in a series of chapters. And to me, this is incredibly freeing. It's the idea that you can disrupt, you can reinvent yourself at the end of the day. One of my favorite examples of people that have different chapters is Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, I think he is somebody that has reinvented himself multiple times. If you think about his first career, which was his bodybuilding career from 1965 to 1975, he won his first Mr. Universe at the age of 20, and then he went on to win several other Mr. Olympias after that. Then from 1970s to 2000s, he had his Hollywood career, starting with Hercules in New York in 1970. And he didn't actually have a break until Pumping Iron, his documentary in 1977, Conan in 1982, and then The Terminator in 1984. That was his big superstar break. And of course, Total Recall, incredible movies in the 90s and the 2000s, one of the biggest Hollywood superstars in the world. And then from 2003 to 2011, he had his political career. He was elected the 38th governor of California in 2003, reelected in 2006, serving till 2011. So he literally went from bodybuilding and became the greatest of all time when it comes to bodybuilding. Then he went to zero. And then he started his career in acting and was struggling for years until he became one of the greatest actors in this superstar genre and he became the greatest in that field. And then he went down and became the governor of one of the most populous states in the United States. I mean, ridiculous. And every single time he started from zero. And so I think that's incredibly inspiring. And I think sometimes we get really romantic about our particular careers and starting something new. And part of that is that, you can't become really romantic about your existing identity. And I believe that, you can look at your life in different chapters, and you can look at your life in different identities. I actually look at your life as a house, and maybe your house has your living room has one identity, your bedroom has one identity, your kitchen has one identity, and you can have multiple identities throughout your life. And guess what? It doesn't really matter what people are going to say. At the end of the day, your friends and family are going to love you for who you are as a person, not for what you try to accomplish during your career. Maybe a couple people will, but for the most part, people are going to evaluate you on the type of person that you are. I know in my life, like my friends they don't care about anything that I'm doing. They don't care about my career, what I'm doing with my life. It's just about the person that I am, the conversations that we're having, and how we respect one another. That's what life is all about. And so I think we should be less afraid of what people are going to say and more willing to have different chapters in our lives. So I love that advice from Chamath, and I think it's incredibly sage advice. All right, this next clip is not an inspiring clip. I actually think that it's a dangerous idea that will help us fuel more ideas around what this artificial intelligence revolution is really going to look like. So this clip is from one of my new favorite podcasts, which is called The Uncensored CMO. And this clip had John Lombardi and Peter Weinberg that just started a new company called Evidenza. And you're going to hear this clip. And the reason why I'm clipping this is because it is actually, it actually gave me, you don't hear new ideas that often, right? Because we're in this world where you have all this content, and to me, this was a brand new idea that helped inspire other ideas when it comes to business. So we're going to drop the clip, and I actually think that this is super disruptive. Let's drop it.
And then we started learning about this very hot new technology called synthetic market research. So in other words, instead of surveying a real human CRM buyer, you can survey the AI impersonating a CRM buyer, an impersona as we call it. And you can ask them the same questions you would have asked in your market research? Are you aware of the brand? What are the buying situations? Which brands come to mind in which situations? Distinctiveness, you name it, any type of market research question. And what we found, we probably run about 60 head-to-head tests over the past 4 months, is that you get essentially the same answers. You know, we're talking about 90-95% similarity between what the synthetic respondents tell you and what the real human respondents tell you, with the critical difference that it didn't take 6 months, it took 6 minutes, 6 hours, and it didn't cost you $1 million, right? Because you didn't have to bribe 1,000 CEOs to take a survey.
Synthetic market research. Synthetic market research is a disruptive idea. It is a dangerous idea. Let's unpack this. So what they're doing is, for many organizations, they're doing, especially for large enterprises, for large brands, market research is such an important and valuable tool for marketers and their chief marketing officers, because it's getting a pulse of what their people, their customers want. It's a pulse on some of the challenges that their key clients and customers are facing. And so what this synthetic market research is doing, it's actually replicating what a CEO or customer might say about their current challenges or what they're seeing in the market. And the fact that Evidenza can create, now I'm not a client of theirs, but I did hear a case study, then I went to their website and I saw that they can almost get to 90 to 95% accuracy and basically replicate what a respondent might say. Further in the clip, or further in the podcast, they described a situation where the Ernst & Young CMO, she actually gave them their market research from real people and from real leaders, and it actually matched up like in the 90 to 95% range. And that is incredible. The idea that they're creating AI-generated market research is actually incredible. And so it got me thinking, if you can create, and if organizations are using synthetic market research, so AI-driven market research, and they're replicating what people are going to say, and it's 95% accurate, what else can be synthetic, right? What else could be AI-driven? Could you have a synthetic CEO? Could you have a synthetic manager? Could you have a synthetic, operating team? And they're actually making 95% of the decisions that are, or 90% of the decisions that are, in the status quo. Like, what does this mean for organizations when AI can do 90% of the work? And I think this is a dangerous question to ask. And I think what's going to happen is that you're going to see more and more organizations not only use synthetic market research, but you're going to see more and more, what I call synthetic strategy, right? If strategy can give us 90%, especially in those organizations where you need to optimize or maintain the status quo, you might have a synthetic strategy that is constantly updating itself with the newest data and putting out strategies and tactics along the way. But this also means that in order to differentiate yourself, and this is full circle, because it goes back to the Will Smith principle, which is you can get to 90%, but that means that you're halfway there. Meaning the great companies, the great leaders will be the ones that will clearly differentiate themselves. And so in a world that's going to become increasingly more AI driven, the ones that can be bold, that can be unique, the ones that can stand out in the world will be more valuable. To this note, I think that, this is why when it comes to marketing, actually what this also means is that the companies that are incredibly creative, that are incredibly authentic and genuine are the ones that are going to win in the future. And so I think although we can use AI for 70 to 90% of what we do, the 10% has to be incredibly human and unique and genuine and differentiated and bold and unapologetic and whatever it might be. And that's why I think creators are going to be so important, because more and more people are going to, people follow, I've been saying this forever on this podcast, people follow people at the end of the day. And that's why, that marketing channel is going to become incredibly more important in a world where everyone has access to synthetic market research, to synthetic data, to, what's going to differentiate you, right? So I love this idea of synthetic market research. And if you have any other ideas around how you can use synthetic data, let me know. I just think that this is such a dangerous idea. So I love that from Evidenza. By the way, I'm not a fan of the name Evidenza, but hey, John, Peter. By the way, John and Peter were executives at LinkedIn, so they absolutely know what they're doing, and so I love this idea. All right, everybody knows at the end of the pod, we talk about some current events, things are happening in the culture, and the first thing that I got to bring up is a couple viral memes that will at least dictate the next couple weeks in terms of culture, and maybe one will do a little bit more damage than the other. So I'm going to play these clips, but it's not really about the clips, but I think what it shows us is the power of memes and the power of culture. All right. These are two back-to-back clips. The first clip is from this girl. I think her name is Haley. She was like in Nashville. She was out like after a bar. Really fun girl. She had this meme that literally took over the planet, I think, over the last couple of days. It's the Tuah meme. And if you have kids watching this podcast, maybe you should stop right now. But this is the Tuah meme, and I found this really interesting, how global it went and how ubiquitous it was. I paired that with another clip, which is the girl on Couch, and they've been remixing a song of her talk. She basically made the lyrics to a song, which is I'm looking for a man in finance, 6'5", trust fund, blue eyes, and she's been able to pair up with David Guetta. I saw her on a clip in Vegas. Like, she's like a star. I think she's signed to like UTA or CAA or one of these big agencies. Tuah girl and GirlonCouch dominating the airwaves. Let's play the clip and I'll tell you why this is interesting.
Makes a man go crazy every time.
Oh, you gotta give him that Tuah and spit on that thing. You get me? I'm looking for a man in finance with trust fund. 6'5", blue eyes, finance, trust fund. 6'5", blue eyes. I'm looking for a man. Finance, trust fund. 6'5", blue eyes, finance, trust fund. 6'5", blue.
By the way, we need Tuah girl and GirlonCouch. They need to be on a podcast immediately. They need to come together and do a podcast immediately, because that is going to break the internet. We need to like break down why in the world did these two clips go viral? Why did they become a sensation? And why do these clips, periodically come up every so often and just capture people's imagination? And I was trying to break it down. So, and I love me. I'm somebody that loves culture. I love memes. I love to know why do we love what we love? Why do things get shared so easily? So, number one, the reason why both these people have become cultural phenomenons. And by the way, the shelf life, and we all know this because of the fragmentation of media, the shelf life of these memes are incredibly limited, right? It's not gonna be able to, like, if you ask somebody in a year, they may not even remember this. Back in the day, you may have been able to have a viral moment like this and build a career. Unfortunately, I don't think that you can build a career now off these viral moments because there's just so many viral moments that are happening all the time. As an example of this is that if I think about another viral meme that came out over a decade ago, which is the Catch Me Outside girl, bad baby or whatever. Bad baddie. I don't even know what her name is. But she was on the Dr. Phil show. She had this thing called Catch Me Outside. She must have been like 14 years old, and she was basically on Dr. Phil, like the most ratchet person on Dr. Phil at that age. And by the way, has become super successful after that. I think her OnlyFans basically got like I don't know. It very lucrative. Okay, I can't verify any of this. Okay, I'm not a OF expert, but she's done very well for herself. Okay, but that was a shelf life. Now I think if you have a viral hit, I don't know how much you can make off a viral hit and the economics around it. But let's break it down. Why do these clips do well? So this is how I'm breaking it down. Number one, authenticity. Both these clips are incredibly authentic. This girl, the Tuah girl that came out of the bar, you can tell she's incredibly authentic. It's incredibly natural. Same with the GirlonCouch. It looks like she just like took a shower and she's just like riffing, coming up with this the lyrics to this song. I love that. It's brief. It's very clear. It's very unique and very novel. It's very personal. Both of those stories are very personal. The Tuah girl, obviously, that's very personal to her and her ex-boyfriend or whatever. And then the girl in finance, obviously, that's something that she might be looking for, which is, listen, we're all looking for a guy that's 6'5", trust fund, finance, blue eyes. Hey, very personal, relatable, highly entertaining, both of them. And I think the other key piece is the shareability, right? The fact that GirlonCouch did something really great, which was she made this inherently shareable in the sense that she knew that DJs may take this and remix this and create different versions of it. So she's almost like creating the meme. She's creating this, she's making it shareable, and she's making it so other people remix it in different ways. Now, the Tuah girl is not necessarily making the shareable because I think what she said was really authentic, but because it's so crazy and because it's so personable, it becomes naturally shareable. So I think those are the criteria. Number one, it has to be incredibly authentic and relatable. It has to be brief. It has to be unique. It has to be entertaining. It has to be shareable. I think those are the reasons why these things go viral. And everyone is trying to create their own viral clips. And it's hard to do, right? It's hard to create something that goes viral, but they absolutely made those clips go viral. And I find it incredibly interesting. I think some of the best creators and influencers and personalities and companies, they understand this framework and how to make something go viral. If I think about Drake to me understands culture and how to make something really shareable. If you remember Hotline Bling and the way that he created the Hotline Bling music video, it was like designed for memes. He was like behind this like really colorful background, and then people were just memeing it. He created Tootsie Slide during the pandemic. It was like designed for TikTok. If you think about Kim Kardashian, like I think she is incredible when it comes to doing something that people will meme and remix and create their own, I guess, reincarnations of. Like if you remember Kim Kardashian's picture where it's like a champagne bottle on her butt and it's like there's like a anyways, she understands culture and what people will meme. If I think about other great memes that I've seen in the past, which is the what's that movie with all the yellow people? Despicable Me. So I don't even know if the Despicable Me people actually created this, but it was all these high school kids going to the theater dressed up really nicely, like in their suits, watching this movie of Despicable Me, and it created its own movement. Other kids around the US and around the world were dressing up to go to the theater, and it was incredibly shareable. It was entertaining. It was authentic. It was just interesting. And so I think the punchline is that if you want to create viral content, I guess don't try so hard. It just has to be authentic and entertaining and relatable and shareable. So that's my take on that. I think the other thing that's in the culture today is last night was the presidential debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And what was really fascinating to me is that this got to be the end for Joe Biden. That was one of the worst performances on a debate that I've ever seen in my life. And I think Joe Biden is probably a really great human. He's a really great guy. I've read so many great reports, throughout history around how much of a great human being and leader that Joe Biden is. But if you are in Joe Biden's circle, you should be ashamed of yourself putting Joe Biden up there. And I actually think that despite all of Joe Biden's incredible accomplishments, one of the most decorated humans in the history of the United States, nobody should have let him up there. And I actually think that it's incredibly selfish for Joe Biden to want to be president in the state that he's in and the energy that he can provide. And I think it's incredibly selfish. You should have moved aside and let Kamala. Listen, you could say what you want about Kamala Harris over the last, during this presidency. Obviously, she hasn't been relevant. Obviously, they've pushed her to aside. I think they got her to focus on the border stuff, and that hasn't been very good. And so they haven't had any trust in Kamala and being a front runner. But what happened? Like when Biden was running and he chose Kamala as his running mate, she was supposed to be the next one. And I don't know what happened over the time, but she wasn't the next one. But I think it's incredibly selfish for Joe Biden to be running. You don't need to run again. You already were the president. You were the VP during Biden's for Obama's run. You don't need to run again. Let somebody that's younger, that has the energy, that can go off and do that. I think it's incredibly selfish. I mean, Donald Trump, whatever, right? You can say whatever you want about Donald Trump and why he's running. That's a completely separate issue. Is he the right person to run to? No, he's absolutely not. But it's incredibly selfish. And the Democratic Party should be ashamed of themselves for allowing Joe Biden to run again. And last night's debate just prove that. I mean, just watch MSNBC or CNN, which historically has been, MSNBC has been left, but also CNN has also been left. And their analysis of Joe Biden's performance was, they were shocked. And it was absolutely horrendous. And it, like the memes that are coming out of Joe Biden's appearance, I mean, it was shocking. So that's those are the two things that I think people are talking about. But by the way, if Joe Biden mentioned, if Donald Trump or Joe Biden mentioned Tuah, they would have won last night. They would have won. They would have caught the culture. They would have caught the memes. And it's sad. It's also sad. I'm not going to lie to you. It's also sad that, that we have to create like clickbait. But to be honest with you, the majority of America, the majority of the world is not watching a full debate. I actually went back and watched the full thing on high speed because it was very slow. But the problem is that now we look at the world through clickbait and headlines, and you almost have to play to that too, right? So yeah, that's what I'd say to that. But listen, beyond the Huck Tuah and finance thing, I think there were some incredibly dangerous ideas today. Thank you guys for listening to the pod. I'd love for you to rate, review, subscribe, whatever you got to do to the pod. And we'll see you on the next one. Peace.